Ella està sobretot recordada per haver treballat al Hammer, a pesar que només va fer 2 pel·lícules amb ells. M'agradaria saber com era treballar a la Hammer i sobretot si era cert que ella era l'única actriu que tenia contracte amb la Hammer.
Yeah, you're talking about Hammer films, aren't you? Yes, I did have a contract for Hammer, which was wonderful. I did the 2 films, Captain Cronus, Vampire Hunter, and Dracula AD 72. It was a wonderful experience. We had about a 4-week shoot to do each film. One was done, I never get this right, Sabina knows it. Which film I think I did first would be Captain Cronus. Yes, Captain Cronus was the first one, even though it had a long time to be shown. It was shown in 74, so it had a slow release, because at the time, I think all the Hammer people and Sir James Carreras and maybe Michael Carreras didn't feel that it had what it took to be. It wasn't the normal Hammer film. It didn't have the blood, the necessary hardcore stuff and it maybe wasn't as gothic. But what it did have, it had an esoteric feel to it. And I think, looking back, it was way ahead of its time. Because when you look at the films, you look at the oops. When you look at the later films, especially Tarantino, and you look at Buffy the Vampire Hunter and Twilight, all the Twilight television things, they gave a nod to Hammer and also to Brian's cleverness, Brian Clements, who was not only our director but our writer. So I think it's a beautiful little film, very well crafted. I don't know if you've seen it at all, but it's very clever, and it's different because yes, it was a vampire, but he didn't drain blood; he drained the youth, and that was where Brian was inspirational. Really, loved working on that film. I liked it because we were outside, and it was very naturalistically shot. We had very little. Maybe a few, just the thingies that you put out, I can't think what you call them, the shiny things that you can shine a little bit. Mostly natural light, mostly shot outside. Interesting weather, because we shot in England towards the autumn, so it was cold. And I had one very scruffy outfit to wear. My character was a gypsy, but she was very much she lived on her own and she was used to being on her own, but also, she was quite, I think she was a kind soul. I think inside she was very kind, but she wasn't a pushover. But she did fall in love with the main man, who was Captain Cronus, very dashing, played by Horst Janssen, wonderful swordsman and a great actor, and a joy to work with. So that was Captain Cronus, and it's gone on now to be a really recognised film. It's a good film. And then because I had the contract, I got to work with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing I worked with twice later on in my career, but I think I was very, very nervous to work on the film because I was working with 2 huge stars, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. But also I was working with a lot of very established young actors. I think maybe I was the youngest, but not necessarily. But they had all been to school, they'd all studied hard at school. So that made me more nervous. But in fact, when I got on set, the people were wonderful. They, Oh, Sabina, I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I forget.
It's fine.
Not really. I'm so sorry. Oh my God.
No, it's fine.
I did only have 2 coffees, not 3. I'm so sorry.
It's alright.
Oh, well done, Jane.
No espero que posaré més temps extra. So, I'm going to translate all that. Sobre la teva pregunta, que sí que és cert que era l'única dona que tenia contracte amb la Hammer, que havia fet 2 pel·lícules. Ella diu que sí, que tenia aquest contracte amb la Hammer, amb aquestes 2 pel·lícules, Capitán Cronos i Dràcula 72, o Dràcula AD, amb Christopher Lee, i ha començat parlant sobretot de la pel·lícula de Capitán Cronos, que per ella va ser un rodatge molt bonic. Van rodar durant 4 setmanes i sempre hi ha una mica de confusió amb aquestes dues pel·lícules de la Hammer sobre la data de que es va rodar. Ella sempre comenta que Capitán Cronos, de fet, la va rodar abans de Dràcula. El que passa que després del rodatge va tenir com una post-sortida al mercat una mica més lenta, però realment va rodar Capitán Cronos abans de Dràcula. També això va passar així perquè per la Hammer no era com la típica pel·lícula gòtica de la Hammer, era una proposta diferent. Era un vampir, però no que xuclava sang, sinó que xuclava la joventut. Era un altre tipus de vampir, o posada en escena típica de la Hammer, no? Vale. Ella diu que era com una pel·lícula potser més esotèrica, això, no? I al mateix temps avançada al seu temps. Diu que per ella veu coses d'aquesta pel·lícula avui en dia en pel·lícules com Twilight o coses de Tarantino o d'altres directors que han begut bastant d'aquesta pel·lícula innovadora, no? Una pel·lícula molt important perquè el Brian Clemens no era només el director, sinó també el guionista, l'escriptor d'aquesta història. Diu, un home molt intel·ligent, una pel·lícula molt intel·ligent amb propostes molt innovadores. És un rodatge que es va fer majoritàriament en exteriors, amb llum natural, tot i ser un rodatge fet a Anglaterra, en el qual el temps no és molt amable, sí que van aconseguir tenir aquesta llum natural i una llum exterior molt bona, molt ben aconseguida. De nou, amb aquesta pel·lícula, Capitán Cronos, ella està molt contenta del seu personatge, que interpretava una gitana, tot i que sempre diu que portava aquestes pintes una mica així desordenades o una mica brutinyol, com a gitana, però que era un personatge amb una ànima molt bondadosa, un personatge que s'enamora del Capità Cronos, per això diu, té aquesta ànima tan pura, no? Sobre l'actor que interpretava el Capità Cronos, diu que era un molt bon actor. I és una pel·lícula que, amb el temps ha anat guanyant reconeixement i avui en dia, molta gent la reconeix com una gran pel·lícula. Llavors ha passat ja a parlar de Dràcula AD, o Dràcula 72, en la qual va treballar amb Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, amb el qual va treballar 2 vegades, i ha començat dient que estava molt nerviosa al principi del rodatge, perquè, clar, eren 2 estrelles ja molt consolidades i ella era potser de les més joves dins d'aquesta pel·lícula, no? I aquí és ja ho podem parlar.
Yeah, no, I understood that bit. Yes.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Pues, mira, precisament per les pel·lícules de Sinbad sempre Luigi Cozzi diu que...
Luigi was a big fan.
Que la va escollir per Star Crash. M'agradaria saber què va ser per ella passar de ser l'acompanyant de l'heroi a ser l'heroïna de la pel·lícula.
It was a homage to Ray. Luigi was a homage to Ray because he loved Ray's work and he met Ray and he thought he was genius. So the nod within Star Crash was with the golems and the creatures was a nod to Ray. And a lovely one too, homage to Ray. I loved working with Luigi. He was hard working, he's very passionate about film and very knowledgeable. And I think he's been to Be Retina. I know he has. Did you meet him? Oh, wonderful. How did you find him? Lovely.
Què et va semblar, Luigi?
Increïble. El vaig conèixer a Sitges, el vaig tindre l'oportunitat d'entrevistar-lo aquí. És una persona increïble.
His passion and his knowledge of film, and he writes books. I just adore him. And his wife, was she here, Letizia?
Yes.
Yeah. No, she's always there. She's his rock. No. Oh, sorry.
But connected to Luigi, Alex was asking, how do you feel? Because Luigi, thanks to Sinbad, casting for the incredible Star Crash.
He did.
So Alex was asking, how were you feeling from being going with the main character, the hero, to becoming the main hero of the film in Star Crash?
Do you know, I didn't really think about that. I knew, I yes, I suppose if I look at it, it was Stella Star. And I didn't really think about it particularly. Maybe after, when people say, oh, Stella Star, I think, yeah, I was Stella Star. For that time, I was Stella Star. And I found it wonderful to be working in Italy and to be working with such a brilliant crew, and the locations we went to in Italy. We filmed on the top of Mount Etna, and that's no CGI. Don't forget, back in the day, 70s, 60s, everything was done in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
So the blood, we're nipping back for a second. So the blood you saw in the Dracula films and the horror films you saw it before your eyes, which helps an actor, I think, because then you're there. But with Luigi, he was going to add a lot of that after. But the locations were wonderful. The Cinecittà, we worked in famous Cinecittà, which was unbelievably impressive because, and Fellini came. I remember Fellini coming on the set when I had Fellini's makeup person make me up, which was wonderful. Fellini, because he made up, Marino Carboni was his name, and he made up Sophie Loren. So I had Sophie Loren's makeup person. I mean, how good is that? And then Fellini came. So it was a wonderful experience. It was very hard work, and I got very fit. I remember doing it because I had 1 week by myself and the crew. None of the other actors or people had arrived. So I was there, and we went to a place called Camacchio in Italy. It was near Bologna. So we went there, and I filmed for 1 week running through the marshes. They were filming. I was running with a gun because I was escaping prison. I'd escaped. Stella had escaped. So I remember doing that week, and that was a very hard week to do. But again, I got very fit doing it, and they kind of taught me a bit of karate moves. I had one unfortunate thing with a stuntman though. It was my fault. We had to, it was the troglodytes. I don't know if you've seen the film at all, Star Crash?
Yes, many times.
So the scene with the troglodytes, with the troglodytes, I had to fight the troglodytes. David Hasselhoff had rescued me. David Hasselhoff. Funny, wonderful, wacky, but very sweet too, very sweet. He rescued me, and then we had all the troglodytes around us, and they were stuntmen, and Federico was the main stuntman who arranged it. So I had to fight with two stuntmen. So we blocked it, and I remember Luigi saying, and Federico saying, when Motove, when you go, Stella Star goes, and you do what we taught. So right, I'm ready, I'm Stella Star, I can do it. I'm scared, but I can do it. So the stuntman, the troglodyte, came at me, but before he came at me, Luigi said, Motove, boom. His nose, I hurt his nose, I hit his nose bled. And Stella Star cried. Terrible! I cried, that was awful. I did. I was so upset, I'd hurt his nose. He was okay, because I went up, I said, yeah, okay. Tutto va bene? He said, sì, but there's blood. I said, no, okay. I got another stuntman. And Luigi said, Caroline, now you went too quick. And I said, but you said Motove. He said, yes, for the men, not you. So I got it wrong. So I was very careful next time. And then he ducked.
Sí.